Yeah, my name's Dr. Langan Evans. I'm the program director for the Masters in Strength and Conditioning at Liverpool John Moores University. I'm also the head of performance sport nutrition here. But I also work as a performance sport nutritionist and S&C coach in professional combat sports, namely in boxing and MMA, but more predominantly boxing these days.
Um, just start. How important do you think nutrition is in relation to in athletes' performance?
Athletes in general or boxing in general?
Um, Start with athletes, and then we can go into boxing a little bit later.
Yeah. So I think very important. The analogy I always use is if you put unleaded 95 in a Formula One car, it'll run, but it won't run as well as if you put the right stuff in there. Um, so yeah, I mean, from a perspective of nutrition across sports, it can be really helpful from, obviously modulating body composition, if you need a certain shape or size, whether that be losing body mass or increasing, body mass, and getting bigger or smaller. It can be important from fueling, different events. If you've got long endurance-based events, you need enough fuel to be able to last for that, or team sport events and things like that. Yeah, so and then obviously things like hydration and certain elements of nutrition that are important, not just for the physical aspects of sport, but also the mental cognitive aspect as well. And then, understanding and being able to inform people about anti-doping risks and things like that's really important from a nutritionist. So yeah, no, I would say it's often hard to tangibly show the benefits of it, but the importance of it can't be understated.
And in terms of you said mentioned there the cognitive benefits of nutrition. How much do you think that your mental health can be affected by your nutrition, by the things that you do put in your body?
Massively. I think there's good bodies of evidence for us to know that that's the case. If you have reward centers within the brain that based on different types of foods that you have, can make you feel good, they can make you feel bad. Um, so yeah, no, there's a big importance, and then from an athletic perspective, it's about trying to find that balance of those foods that make you feel good and that you enjoy. So enjoying and engaging in the social aspect of eating food, but then the types of food that are going to fuel, both mental and physical performance.
How much of a role do you think eating disorders play in boxing, especially potentially after retirement? Obviously, the weight cutting and the fluctuations in weight is massive in boxing and could be a massive issue. How much do you think that the relationship with food is affected in your boxing career and especially afterwards?
Yeah. I think it's affected massively, and I think it's affected pretty irreparably as well for a lot of people. There's no hard evidence or data on the prevalence of, say, eating disorders in boxing. I think it goes without saying that every boxer pretty much has got a disordered eating pattern in the sense of when they're out of camp, they eat a certain way, and when they're in camp, they eat a certain way. Um, but yeah, I think fundamentally it does have an effect not only in your career but post career as well. We did a study not so long ago showing kind of the weight fluctuations in a world champion boxer over 5 years, and the older they were getting and the more they were making weight, the more weight that they were putting on. And then, classic case study in boxing by his own admission is Ricky Hatton. You read his book and he talks about obviously, the Ricky Hatton mantra that he had when he was in, an actual boxer, and then how much he ballooned up after his career, and um, you know, suicidal thoughts and tendencies and things like that. So yeah, it plays a huge role. But I think what we're kind of, or what I'm getting very interested in as an ex, not just a researcher slash practitioner in this space, but as an ex combat sport athlete. I never did boxing. I used to do a combat sport called Taekwondo, and I made weight from the age of like 12 until I retired. It was the making weight part that made me retire quite early when I was 25. And I used to habitually weigh like 68, 70 kilos and make 58 kilos for my weight category. And now I weigh 95 kilos and I'm not eating massive amounts of food. I'm not eating a whole range of things. So there's a thing that happens after a training camp, and it's called rebound hyperphagia. Hyperphagia coming from the Greek meaning to eat, to overeat, to eat a lot. Where there's just this insatiable desire for fighters to just eat as much as they can of the things that they've been deprived from and things like that. And what we don't know a lot of at the minute is how that's regulated. Is it mentally regulated? Is it physiologically regulated? Is it a bit of both? I probably personally think it's a bit of both. It's probably the physiology signaling, the psychological, the cognitive. But when you kind of repeatedly yo-yo and do that for a period of 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, it's bound to have some impact later on in life. So it's you've obviously got the dangers in contact and combat sports and boxing in particular of concussion and brain injury and CTE, but the make and weight bit can be quite dangerous to health / have an effect later on in retirement for sure.
In terms of that, what are some ways that you would suggest in combating this and making the relationship with food in boxing a lot more positive?
Not a clue. This is the problem. So combating the post, listen, so I think we've done some good research. I've been fortunate to be involved in this area now for over 10 years. And we have got a really good handle and process of how to get fighters to make weight safely and effectively now. I'm working with some really good fighters at the moment who say to me, I've never made weight so well, and I'm eating well and I feel good and the relationship with food is good, and it can be really achieved. Everyone's individual, so it's about understanding the individual. And that just comes from understanding the person's starting weight and their body composition and how you're going to manipulate it, the time scale that you've got, how you refuel them. So I have to say there's not many athletes I work with who I would say have got an eating disorder or disordered eating kind of behaviors, for sure. And if anything, when I start working with certain fighters who maybe come in, that's what we're working on first. It's reversing that disordered eating and eating disorder behavior to then get them to do it safely and effectively. So yeah, we know that. The problem is that we know it. Me as a researcher and a practitioner, I know it. Getting that knowledge to the end user, so if you're working with a pro who's in a big fight, they're earning good money, they can, afford to bring you on board as part of the team, great. Or even if you're working with some starting guys and you're doing it, because I try and do it, and try and help people for free as much and as often as I can, to help them and develop them over time. The issue that we tend to have, in my opinion, is that a lot of the governing bodies, and licensing bodies and things are not necessarily doing a lot to encourage this as well. So, hopefully that'll change. I'm looking to engage and speak to a lot of these bodies and try and work with them to maybe put things in place that will help fighters, particularly at the amateur level, because, if you think about the amateur level, if you're not on, an England or a GB squad, for example, in our country, then you're probably not going to get access to a nutritionist or this type of advice. And even guys on some of those squads don't get access to a nutritionist, or guidance around that stuff. So it's I think it's we know how to make weight well in camp. It's just getting that info to the end user. The after bit, what we were talking about, that's the bit that we need to do a fair bit of good research in now, because we need to try and understand the regulation of what's happening, because if we can understand the mechanism, that'll better inform us of how we can then go in from a psychological and physical perspective of maybe trying to change that. And there's some ways that people talk about now. So there's this idea in pros of reverse dieting, the opposite way. So you've dieted down to your weight and then reverse back out. But, if you've got quick fights in succession, that's not really an option, or from my experience, it doesn't really work that well either. So yeah, that's the bit that we need to get a bit of a handle on.
And in terms of that, you spoke about the amateurs that may not have a professional nutritionist on their side, because obviously when you're in the game that low, it's essentially a minimal team. What advice would you give them? Practices maybe that could help them make weight successfully and most important, healthily.
Yeah. Obviously, the key difference in amateurs is that the weigh-in structure is very different to professional. Professional is not so bad in the sense that you can make the weight and you have 24, 30 hours in some instances to rehydrate, refuel. So you can kind of push the boundaries a little bit more. But amateurs, you're lucky if, even in a single bout, so a fight night scenario, you're going to weigh in 2, 3, 4 hours before you fight. And in a tournament scenario, you've got to do that every morning of your event. So you're not getting 24 hours. You're lucky if you're getting, it's say in a tournament scenario, you weigh in the morning at the general weigh-in, and you might not fight until the afternoon. You might get 8 hours. The key with that is not to lose too much weight so it affects your performance. Can't really give any generalized guidance in terms of what to do because it's very different person to person. This is the problem with this. There's not really I can go, okay, Callum, every fighter should lose this percentage, and do it in this way. And because everyone's an individual, it doesn't work like that. Some are going to be able to lose more and feel fine. Some are going to be able to lose a lot less and not feel so fine. So I don't really want to start talking about guidance, but the best guidance I can give is understand when you've grown out of your weight, particularly in junior boxers and stuff like that and schoolboys. Understand you're not going to be that weight. You're going to grow, you're going to get bigger, and there might be a benefit to you actually moving up in weight. And amateur boxing's your apprenticeship. It's if you're an amateur boxer and you've got ambitions of becoming a pro, or you've got ambitions of getting into the the GB team, going the Olympics, anything like that, then your schoolboy years and your junior years, that's where you learn the game, and you don't necessarily want to be worrying about making weight, because trust me, when you're a pro and when you're a senior, you'll be worrying about that enough, So understand when you've grown out your weight, understand that losing big amounts of weight is not going to be good for your performance, purely because it's a negative thing to do to your body, and B, you just don't have the time to rehydrate and refuel. And then the key thing, once you've for guys rehydrating and refueling, a couple of general pointers: as soon as you get off the scale, don't drink just water. If you've done a little bit of a sweat out and you've lost that little bit of weight, you need to try and give your body things to hold on to the water. So this is where like carbohydrate drinks and electrolyte drinks and things like that are the type of things. One of the worst things you can do is get off the scale and drink water, because all that's going to happen to that water is it's not going to get absorbed. It's just going to go straight through. And I always say, people always think, oh, I've gone to the toilet within an hour of the weigh-in and I'm I'm weeing clear. That's not a good thing, because what that means is it hasn't been held in the muscles where it needs to be held. It's just gone straight through and straight out. So if the longer it takes you to have a wee after you've been rehydrating, you're doing a good job, because that means the body's holding onto the fluid and not letting it go. Just because you're not having a wee doesn't mean that you're dehydrated. It just means that the body's keeping it where it needs it. So that's probably the most general advice that I can give to the amateur guys.
And in terms, you said potentially about working or speaking to organisations about getting something put in place. What sort of would that look like from in an ideal world from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, in pros for me, I think that pros obviously have to do an annual medical for the license. And a key thing for me, I think that would be hugely valuable, because pros are just as guilty as out of amateurs as staying in a weight category for too long. You speak to a lot of seasoned veteran pros and they'll be like, you know what, I probably stayed at that weight far too long. I think a real quick win is part of the medical. You have to do a body comp assessment. So this year, based on your body comp, what weight do you want to do? And you look at the body comp and you go, you can't make that weight no more. It's not feasible. You know, or you want to make that weight, and it's like, yeah, you can, it's still feasible. You're not telling them how to do it, but you're just giving them almost an MOT to go, you know what, you've grown now, it's not a feasible way for you to be in anymore. And having that as part of the medical would be valuable. Having, and I think this is across professional and amateur organisations, some education material, education sessions, would be valuable. I mean, have you ever seen any of them? Of the ABA or the British Boxing Board of Control ever invested in anything related to, a simple, session that, parents, coaches, fighters could watch? It wouldn't be a great deal of investment. It just needs the right people to record the material and for it to go to the right end users. So, you're never ever going to regulate your way out of this problem in any combat sports, because it's just too culturally ingrained. People make weight, it's what they do. So you can bring every rule in the book that you want to bring in. Fighters will find a way around it. So don't regulate, educate, so they're two really quick, easy wins, Callum. Just, make it part of pros medicals, a body comp assessment, and do some education material that can be disseminated out to the right people, and it might be a coach's version, a parent's version, a fighter's version, that they're able to understand and digest and use some guidelines that they can use to try and make weight. And because I'm lucky that I work with a lot of fighters in a very famous gym in Liverpool, a Rotunda gym. They have a brilliant amateur team, and I help some of the amateur guys out. And a couple of quick conversations with them, and they catch on really quick, and you can really change the behaviours. So, everyone's willing to learn, I think, and open to getting that information. It just needs to be invested in, I think.
Yeah, I've done my research for this subject in mental health and boxing for the last couple of weeks, and the one sort of theme that I've seen, even speaking to nutritionists, to mindset coaches, and even speaking to journalists, that education is the key thing that's not happening at the moment, especially in boxing and in combat sports in general.
Yeah, what's happening? So not just for nutrition, but for training, conditioning, like you say, post retirement. Look, the problem that you've got in professionals is that a lot of professional fighters are, they're independent contractors, in a sense that, they're not contracted to the British Boxing Board of Control, so, they're not necessarily contracted to a given promotion for their entire career. So, I understand, these organizations don't necessarily have any duty of care to these guys because of that. But I just think it'd be an ethically really good, quick win for these guys to maybe put something together for fighters, and then, as you were saying, mental health wise, things for them to consider post retirement and things like that as well. And it might not necessarily be the most financially beneficial thing to do, but it would be an ethically good thing to do, But again, and this is not me saying promoters and organisations do bad jobs, because they don't. You only got to look at the boxing talent that comes out of this country, that they do a very good job. But I just think that adding things on like this would be of benefit, basically.
And just one last thing. What one piece of advice would you give to someone that wants to go into the sports nutrition industry, or to become a practitioner? What would be that one piece of advice that you'd give to them?
Get educated. Get educated is the key, because we live in a world of social media, and there's a lot of absolute rubbish on social media about, well, not just nutrition, about everything in life, to be general. Politics, training, everything you can think of. So don't take your advice from social media, because it's not a regulated source of information where whether that's factually correct or not. So the key thing for me is go and get educated. If you want to be the best sports nutritionist, if you want to be the best sports nutritionist in the world for boxing, get in and around boxing and understand the culture and the environment and the people and the processes, but then understand the fundamentals of the thing that you're trying to put in place. And this is where I'm quite lucky in a sense of I've been around combat sports since I've been 12 years of age. So I know the culture, I know the people, I know what it's about. But then I've done a PhD in sports nutrition, and I know, I've got knowledge in that. And you bring those two things together, you have success. So get educated in the discipline that you want to be good at, but then get educated in the environment that you want to operate in. Because, I get a lot of people asking me, oh, will you work with, these endurance guys or this team sport? And I always say no, because I'm not. Yes, I've done some education in sports nutrition generally, but that expertise is in the environment that I work within. It's not in those others, and I don't think that I'm adequately qualified to operate in those other environments personally. So it's never been a truer word, stay in your own lane. That doesn't mean that you can't operate as a multi, sport discipline nutritionist, but I just so happen to specialize and operate in this lane, and that's the one that I tend to stay in. But yeah, going around the house as always, get educated in the environments and the sports, get educated in the discipline. So go and learn about sports nutrition from the best place that you can afford, from a money and a financial and time perspective.
That's perfect. Cheers. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anytime.